Hello. In my earlier session we have learned how to record macro. In this session we are going to learn how to write macro. So to start with a macro we need to go into the Visual Basic Editor. So for going to the Visual Basic Editor we need to select developer, and from developer click on Visual Basic Editor. As in this case you can see the developer tab is already selected, so we will go to the Visual Basic tab and click on this. Now we are placed into the Visual Basic Editor tab. As you can see on the left panel of the Visual Basic Editor, sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, this workbook. These are nothing but the objects of the Excel workbook. So to write any macro you need to be in these objects or in module. I'll explain you module later, as you know that the recorded macro is stored in the module, but we will drill down granular level later in later sessions. So first I am just double clicking on the object sheet 1. Now I am placed into the sheet 1 editor. Here we will write some codes. So what I am going to cover here, I am just going to cover range, cells, active cell, copy and message box. So first we will be covering range. So to write a macro, to start with a macro we need to start with sub, that is subroutine, sub and the sub name. So we will be giving the name as macro 1 and just press enter. Now you can see end sub is automatically placed. So any code which we will be writing for a macro will be lying between sub name and the end sub. So as I'm going to show you first the range property of the sheet object. So how to write the range? The syntax is range, start with double quote and then type ranges. So in this case I'm going to select a range from A1 to B10. So just type A1 and the ranges are divided, the start and end range, by the colon. So colon and then B10. So in this case our start range will be A1 and the end range will be B10. Now this is the range, but it will not do anything for you. So to select those ranges you need to use the select property of range object. Now again you will be wondering why I am saying range as an object, because range is the property of sheet but select is the property of range. So range will become object for select property. So just type dot, that is period sign. You will see the pop-up thing showing various properties of range object. Here our aim is to select, so we will type S. Once you type S, the select will be appearing in the pop-up box. Just press enter. Now that select is selected. Now to see the impact of this code you need to execute the macro. For executing the macro line by line you need to use F8 key. So the macro will get executed line by line. So I'm just going to execute this macro. So pressing F8, you can see the cursor is placed on line 1 and then line 2. Now line 2 is going to be executed, and then the cursor has placed to a end sub, that means it has come to an end, and again F8. Now the macro has executed and stopped. Now we will see the result, what the macro has done for us. Just go to the Excel workbook by selecting Alt F11 key. Now you can see range A1 to B10 has been selected. So this is the thing we have done automatically by writing one line code of range. Now we will see cells. In cells will be used when we need to use select particular cell, and ranges are used to select the ranges of the data. So again we will go back to the Visual Basic editor using Alt F11, not F, Alt F11 key. Now we are in Visual Basic editor. Now I will show you the property of sheet cells. Just type cells and then open the bracket. You will see default row index, column index. Row index is nothing but the row number and column index is nothing but the column number. So just type 2, that means at row 2, and then column 3, that means column C. And we will be assigning the values to the column by equal sign. Just place an equal sign and then type some value. Whatever values you are going to show, that needs to be in double quotes. So I'll be writing, this is my first macro, close with double quotes. Now my macro is ready to type. This is my first macro in C2, that is row 2, column 3. Now we will execute this using F8. Okay, now macro has stopped executing its line. Now we will see the output. Now you can see in C2, this is my first macro has been placed. So our macro has done the job for us. Now we will see active cell. So place the cell anywhere in the sheet, like I'm placing my cell at L13. So I will go back to the macro. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the active cell. Active cell dot value equal to, this is my first macro. Yep. Now the macro is ready. So this will be typing, this is my first macro in the cell where our cursor is located. So we will execute this macro. The macro is executed. Now we will see the output. Now you can see, as we have placed our cursor by default on L13, so this is my first macro text has been printed in L13. So this way I have explained how the range cells can be used in the macro. Now I will show you Messagebox, how the Messagebox works. We will go back to the Visual Basic editor by selecting F11. Now we are in Visual Basic editor. Now what I am going to do here, I am just going to place some message which will display the message to the end user. So for displaying a message to the end user, the syntax is Messagebox, and in just type some message. Always message will be displayed with double quotes. So I'm just going, hey, this is my first macro. Close the message with double quote. Now our macro is ready to display the message, hey, this is my first macro, to the user. Now we will execute this. See, that message box code is displaying the message to the end user. In this case we are the end user. So hey, this is my first macro. Click on OK. Again you will be placed back to the Visual Basic Editor, as we have not ended the execution of the code. Now it is ended. So this way we have learned here range, cells, active cell, message box. Now I am going to show you how to copy and paste the values from one cell to another cell. For that I am going to delete this code, and I am going to place some value like John. So this value John, which is in cell A1, range A1, need to be copied from here and to be pasted to M1. So for this I am going to write a code so that it will be copied from A1 and pasted to M1. Okay, so get ready to write a code for copy. Go back to Visual Basic Editor by selecting Alt F11. Now we are in Visual Basic Editor. Now for writing a copy, first you need to select the value which is lying in A1. So for selecting that we will use range property of the sheet object A1, as we have to pick up the value from A1, and then select, enter. Now we will copy. For copying, as we have selected A1, so we will be using selection dot copy. Now this will copy the data from cell A1, and for pasting just provide an space and then provide the destination range. So in our case M, so we will be giving range M1. Now we will execute this macro. So range A1 dot select is selecting the value from cell A1, and selection dot copy is copying the value from cell A1, and range M1 is the destination where the copied value will be pasted. So we will execute this macro using F8 key. Now we will see our output. As you can see, the value which was existing in A1 is now existing in M1 as well. So this is how we have copied the value from A1 to M1. So this way we have learnt now the range, cells, active cell, select, copy and message box. In my next session I will be explaining more properties of the sheet and more properties of the objects of range, cells, active cells, etc. etc. Thank you.